Sorry.
Hi Doris. The YouTube link. What's the YouTube link?
We are live.
Okay. We are live. Okay. Thank you.
Good afternoon to everyone, and thank you for joining us. And on behalf of the University of Oxford, the Africa Studies Center, Africa Oxford Initiative, and our partner, YEGA Africa, I welcome you all to what we hope will be the first in a series of conversations around alternative politics in Africa, starting with Nigeria's upcoming elections. And in our messaging, we asked if Africa is ready for alternative politics and who or what these alternatives are or could be. And hopefully over the next 2 days, we just might find answers and glean new perspectives from our illustrious speakers, and of course, from your constructive questions and comments. Now, the title of this conference, Redesigning Democracy, with a focus on popular culture and next generation politics. Sorry, if you could mute your microphones, please. Thank you. The title of this conference, Redesigning Democracy, with a focus on popular culture and next generation politics, lends itself to critical analysis. The conceptual poster packs a punch with symbolisms aimed at generating new perspective on politics in Nigeria. Now, 2 years ago this month, young Nigerians protested against police brutality and demanded a radical change in the nation's overall political and governance architecture. Lives were lost, and we remember those who fell today. Youth eventually left the streets, but the heightened sense of political consciousness remains and continues to grow. And in some quarters, this has been theorized as an awakening, while some others, myself included, argue that Nigerian youth have never been apolitical, not if we take an expansive view of politics, political actors, and spaces. And we have seen spheres of influence growing steadily from everyday popular imagination and processes, the arts, creative industry, technology, and much more. So while electoral politics is crucial to the democracy project, can we imagine other forms of influence outside the parochial focus on big politics and explore the alternatives these other forms bring to the table? So as such, we thought and sought to bring together a diverse range of actors with varied approaches to politics, from scholars to established politicians, people from the creative arts, innovators, and the media, all connected, albeit in different ways, to the political process. Ours as scholars is to interrogate, question, probe, and explore diverse social phenomena happening around us, both historically and contemporary. So this unceremonious interaction starting today between high politics and everyday culture also taps into the growing global youth discontent with conventional politics, governance, and political ideologies, issues all our speakers are passionate about and have articulated in different forms. And we have taken the 2023 general elections in Nigeria as our discursive starting point, looking at the impact of the NSAS movement framed as alternative politics, the impact on governance and the elections, but also thinking around ideas of next generation and the kinds of opportunities available to them. And we will kick off this session with a message from the university, first of all, and I will be handing over to Dr. Anne McKenna, who is the co-director of the Africa Oxford Initiative, AFOX, a vibrant platform for all things Africa at the University of Oxford. Dr. Anne, over to you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much, Doris, for that wonderful introduction to the conversation of today and for the days that are coming up. It's wonderful for AFOX to be part of this conversation. For those who've not interacted with us before, AFOX is a platform for all things Africa. Our main vision is to make Africa a strategic priority for the University of Oxford and other global research entities. And this is really up our alley, as it were. We aim to do this through engagement such as this and creating opportunities for equitable and sustainable collaborations in research and academic excellence more broadly, across multiple disciplines as well. So the conversation of people from the arts and the political space and scientists speaking together to address some of these important issues in the African continent are really important to us. That is really the essence of why AFOX was set up. This particular event is very close to our heart, not least because it's being led by our very own Dr. Doris Okenwa, but also that Samson, one of the AFOX scholars, is involved in this conversation, and we're delighted that we've been part of this journeys, both for scholars and researchers in African scholars and researchers in Oxford, but also with our partners across the continent. So we're excited to be a part of this. We're looking forward to the engagement of the speakers this afternoon and tomorrow, and we hope, like us, you will join us in the enthusiasm of the conversations that will follow. Thank you so much, Doris, and back to you.
Thank you, Anne. And now we'll just have a few words from Samson Itodo, an experienced community organizer and development practitioner, and he serves as the executive, he's actually here with me, executive director of YAGA Africa, who would talk about his connection and YAGA's collaboration with us and to the bigger ideas of the project. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Well, thank you very much, Doris. And thanks, Anne. It's great to see you and to see everyone. Very delighted to be part of this conversation today. And we look forward to conversations and contributions from our esteemed speakers in these 2 days sort of conference around redesigning democracy through alternative politics. For those who don't know AFOX, Oxford, and I'm very happy that we're able to keep the conversation going about the future of democracy and redesigning democracy. The subject suggests there's something political processes, and this is why the question of alternative politics remains central to conversations around how do we redefine, reconceptualize democracy in a way that it delivers to the people across the world, not just Africa. Citizens are asking big questions, and failure to deliver care, high quality education, economic prosperity, peace and security. And this has informed, this new arenas of political competition that we see across Africa and across the globe. This conversation, we hope, will provide solutions or response or answers, to the dilemmas that we encounter in present-day world. And principal amongst them is, must political competition or politics be played or retained within formal democratic institutions like political parties? Are there opportunities of playing politics outside this formal political institutions? Because Because for young people across the world and across Africa, their own view of democracy deviates from the conventional, traditional view of elections, parliamentary practice as their own notion of democracy. So we hope that these new arenas of political competition would help us answer and respond to the big question before us. Is the question of trust. We're redesigning democracy because and young people are looking for other avenues, but looking for solutions to the everyday problems and challenges that they face. The third major and critical question is that these traditional political institutions are still under the strong political institutions. Can we hold of dominance within these political institutions and forge new sort of partnerships around how to reshape politics? It's our hope and desire that in this conversation, that we don't just only catalyze discussions around, but that this conversation can produce, solutions on how we can alter the balance of power in a way that democracy delivers to the people. And so we look forward to, insightful conversations, and we're very delighted to have you all. And over to you, Doris.
Thank you. Thank you, Samson. We have details of all our speakers up on the events website. We'll share the link with you, but I will make very brief introduction so that we can proceed. I'll start with our chair, Professor Wale Adebanwe, who is joining us from the University of Pennsylvania. Professor Wale, thank you very much. He is a Presidential Penn Compact Professor of Africana Studies, and his research very vast, are in the broad area of social mobilization of power and interest in Africa as manifested in and all through ethnicity, nationalism, racial and urban formation. Does a lot of work on elites, state and civil society, media, intellectual history, and social theory. So Professor Wale, thank you very much. We're in very capable hands. We have Honorable Nnenna Elendukeje, who is a former member of parliament and served 3 terms as the chair of the Committee on Foreign Affairs. She was one of the few female representatives in a male-dominated legislative body, and she is staging a return to the Nigerian parliament, running for office in 2023 elections. Simi Olusola, the self-described T-shaped professional, is a development consultant and the 2023 candidate for a seat in the Ekiti State Assembly. So that's a very nice pairing. Simi heads innovation at the Center for Journalism, Innovation and Development, where she leads product management and supports with strategic innovation. And you would find her working in the intersections of young people, technology, entrepreneurship, governance, and politics. Simi, you're welcome. And we hope you will join us shortly. Debo Adedayo, popularly known as Mr. Macaroni, is an award-winning content creator, actor, and producer for film and stage. His art and online presence engages a combined audience of over 10 million followers with dramatic themes of satire and social justice. We also have the award-winning Seun Okinbaloye, the politics editor and host of the critically acclaimed weekly political program, Politics Today, and the flagship Sunday Politics. Over the last 5 years, both shows have grown to become the most watched in Nigeria, providing a sort of compass for national and political discourse. Finally, Professor Okechukwu Ibianu, who was a National Electoral Commissioner in the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, Nigeria's election management body. And prior to this job, he was Professor of Political Science and concurrently Research Professor in Development Studies at the University of Nigeria, Nsukka. His academic career spans over 30 years and has been a fellow of a number of international bodies. Can I now hand you over to the capable hands of Professor Wale to take the conversation forward? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kenwa. Now that we have our brief, I don't have to go over what we need to do. I think I would just like to invite the speakers to let us have the benefit of their perspective. The first set of speakers will be two speakers, Honorable KJ and Simi Olusola. They'll be speaking to the theme of political and social capital, how to navigate big politics and mobilize popular support in the context of our larger theme of redesigning democracy. So let me start with Honorable KJ. Against the backdrop of your experience, what are your views on how to navigate big politics in contemporary era and alongside mobilizing popular support?
Oh, well, thank you, Professor Wale, for throwing me up in the deep end and asking me to speak to the experiences that I have. But let me say that 2023 elections in Nigeria are like no other elections. And I agree with Doris when she said that this is not the first time that there's been a youth movement as far as politics in Nigeria is concerned or social capital affecting politics. But two amazing life-changing or political landscape-changing events have happened in the last couple of years that have made the 2023 elections nothing like we've ever seen. And I'll tell you that both of them would be the Not Too Young to Run bill that was brought to the floor of the National Assembly by Yaga. At the time, I was a member of parliament. And that was a way of renegotiating the political space and asking that, through the instrumentality of parliament, that we reduce the age of political participants in government. Now, of course, there was a lot of aggressive advocacy, and at the end of the day, that bill was signed into law by the president. And in the elections following, immediately after that, we saw a hike in 34% of people below the age of 40 actually trying to participate in the political space. Now, if that was a little calm and the negotiations were more friendly, Nigeria got hit by the EndSARS movement. Now, the EndSARS movement, and I always say to people that the EndSARS movement throws up the argument or the conversation that we live increasingly in the world without borders. Because like with what happened with the Arab Springs, we saw the Black Lives Matter. And shortly after the Black Lives Matter in America, we saw the EndSARS movement in Nigeria. And I guess that the link between both things was that there was young people who were disenchanted with everything that was happening in the country. And of course, police brutality had gone on for a couple of years and for 2 years, 2017, but it was basically an online movement. And then of course, the EndSARS happened. And as they say, politics as we knew it got changed forever. Now, I would say that drawing from my experience, galvanizing the base is totally different. I was a spokesperson for the Atiku Abubakar campaign of the PDP in the last time. And most of the work that we did was actually trying to get people to come out and register to vote. So much of the work, we spent so much time trying to galvanize the base and asking, and I remember that one of the campaigns we had was that bad people are elected by good people who don't vote. And at the bottom of that was that so many people, there was so much voting apathy, nobody was interested in voting. And so we, rather than speak to the ideals of what our candidate was, his manifesto, we're more interested in even getting people out to vote. Now, fast forward a couple of years, fast forward post the EndSARS, we have a totally different kettle of fish. In the last couple of months, we've seen an influx of young people troop to INEC offices and register to vote. By the statistics, they say they have 10.5 million new voters, and they have over 8 million young voters below the age of 40. So what that has done is that the base is almost as if they're wagging the dog. It's almost as if the base is now propelling us politicians in the way that we should go. Now, you asked a very pertinent question. Is this, and I speak to what Doris was saying, that this is not the first time it has happened, no. But we have seen that there is more interest in politics. These days, you find that so many young people are more interested in the social reengineering that is necessary for government. And of course, the impetus has been given by so many left-wing growths of government. For instance, what happened in Kenya? The younger Nigerians have realized that big politics is starting to give way for lesser known candidates in smaller political parties just because of the drive of the people. And so when you see things like what happened in Kenya that threw up a rote against more entrenched candidates, and then you see the demographics in Nigeria driving it. I mean, what did NSAS do? As in the words of Madeleine Albright, she said, "Now that I found my voice, I'm never going to be silent." And we watched the young people, the NSAS movement, throw up a structure that was so capable. It was leaderless, but it was so strong that had it gone on for longer than it did, it probably would have held the Nigerian government to ransom. In fact, it did hold the Nigerian government to ransom. For a change, the Nigerian government was actually started to negotiate with them. And so, you know, we've seen the drive, and they've seen that they're capable of raising a lot of funds. They're capable of creating the opportunities for people to just come out and galvanizing the base in the way that they want. Again, they are the largest demography in Nigeria. And so they've realized that they're now the silence breakers. They've broken the silence. They've broken out of the bounds. They've come out of what it is that we believe that the inaction, that the comfortable inaction of the average Nigerian has been broken by this audacious movement. And I think that in itself has just challenged completely politics in the way that we need. So for you to ask me to draw from the experiences I had, my experiences are old big politics, where of course it was talking to the people, but now I think that it is now the people telling us what it is that they want. And so you find politicians running behind this new wave of social re-engineering. In the past, it was an elite consensus. Now it is the youth drive. And so it's a totally different kettle of fish. I'll stop there for now.
Thank you very much, Honorable KJ. I will now call on Simi. Against the backdrop of your own experience and your location, I would want you to speak to the question of how to navigate big politics and the ways in which popular mobilization can happen in the context of Nigeria's Fourth Republic.
All right, thank you very much. So, with respect to my journey so far, I think I have done a pretty decent job of succeeding so far up to this point. And things I have learned along the way is that, okay, so let me take a step and talk about why, I chose to go in the direction that I went in. So I am the candidate of the PDP. And I remember when I was going to join the PDP, some folks were telling me, why not join a young, more idealistic party? Run of the big at the time. So my thinking was that any young person who truly wanted to get into office in 2023, that the best thing would be to go through one of the big two. But if you had long-term plans, then you could go with any of the parties in the third force, and see how to build the party over some years and to see how they could be credible opposition to the big two. So that meant me coming into the PDP And I had no political background. I knew no one in politics. I mean, I was coming from the development sector. That was everything under the tech space, the social impact. And so it was about first navigating and getting people to show me the way. So what I started with, and it's what I've been telling a lot of other young people, was I started coming in by offering value to the party. So, after I'd gotten myself to meet with certain people, I started with how can I help the party be better? It was never for me about, how do I get into office or how do I get things from the party? And that saw me in the matter of a year after joining the party, I was already serving on national committees. So that's one thing, like, come from that angle of how can you give value? And then when that came to running for office locally, every odd was stacked against me. There's the fact that I was a new person. I joined the PDP in 2019. So I'm actually maybe later towards 2019. So maybe I started becoming active in 2020. So, and I started going back home towards the end of 2020. So I've probably been like just a little over a year being very active at the grassroots. So I was, among all the aspirants, I was the every other.
Mr. Macaroni, can you mute your okay, go ahead, please.
Every other person I was running against were homegrown folks, that I first faced that kind of pushback, like, you're just coming from somewhere, I want to come and, take what other people have been working for, because that was one. I was the youngest person. And I mean, that part even pains because I'm not particularly young, like I'm not in my 20s. And I thought I'd stopped being the youngest person anyway, but I was the youngest person among all of those people, and I was the only woman. So I had to do a lot to overcome all these barriers. So there was already a lineage of a line of people who were loyal to different aspirants already. But there are three things that I would say helped me. One was just staying true to myself. And I really think that helped, because a lot of people will come and tell me and say, it feels like we've known you for years. Like, I don't even know why we like you so much. I don't know why I chose to work with you. I don't know why I'm doing so much for you. Different people say, it feels like we have known you for a much longer time. There were a lot of people in the party who did not know me until February. People in my ward, in my unit, maybe a few leaders across the party knew me, but I wasn't known by everybody. So a lot of people didn't know me. Everybody in the party didn't know me. But the fact that some leaders knew me, my ward members knew me, of course, helped. Because I had been doing things at the ward level, supporting the party. And when we're doing stuff as a national, I was helping cascade and monitor. So that helped. So I think just being true to myself, I think they could see that sincerity of purpose. So, and I wasn't trying to conform. I posted something on LinkedIn recently that I didn't even know why, because I posted a picture where I was wearing boots and like a jacket, and because that's usually like that's how I walk. Like, I wear t-shirts and jeans and sneakers. Like, that's me on the regular, and that did not stop. And that is like the entire opposite of how people dress here. But I figured I was just going to be myself. You take me as I will communicate with you. So that was one. Me just being myself, something, and being sincere with them. I would like to believe that actually struck a chord with them. And then the next thing I did was I was actually with those people. So I resigned from all paid employment in December 2021 because I wanted to focus on it. I knew that if I was going to have the chance of winning the primaries, I needed to give 150%. I used to live in Abuja. So I resigned from paid employment in December 2021, put on my affairs in order January. Like first or second week in February, I packed up my life in Abuja and moved to Ikere, my hometown. I know daily I was engaging with these people. I was going to their houses. And I keep saying out of all so eventually, just but there should have been 70 plus that were, if things had gone the so. I don't think that there was any of those people whose house or shop I didn't go to, 3, 4, 5 times. That was how deliberate I was at me, because I knew I was coming from a far distance of them not knowing me. So they had to know me by force. I had to make sure they knew me one-on-one. They knew, like they saw me as a friend or as someone they could talk to. So I did a lot of that. And of course, just being there to help them with their needs and all of that. The third thing was me positioning myself as somebody who could actually bring change. And there's something a lot of the other young people see me as someone to aspire to. Showing them that for me, this goes beyond politics that you've seen before. It's about, I was very big on telling them, oh, I've done work across South African countries, I've done work across this, and it wasn't about bragging. It was so that they would know that I was actually bringing something to the table. So when they saw the kind of work that I put in from day one, and they saw that, okay, this person actually knows, she knows what she's talking about, and that's sincerity or purpose. I think that took me, it so happens that the incumbent is from my ward. So ideally, the next person should not be from my ward. But the nice thing, or the lucky thing, was that there are 6 wards in my constituency. All the wards had a representative before. So it was easy to say, let's just start over from this ward that we're ending with. And the only reason people could make that argument was because they actually wanted me. So, they fought to make it start from my ward again because of me, because they wanted me. So when it was time for the primaries, and the new leaders in my local government spoke to leaders at the state level and said, this is, we're wanting to start from any ward this time around. And then I won the first primary. And after my first primary, someone came and said, because the first primary was not exactly official, the state wanted to, we had a good by-election to work with. So they wanted to just get it out of the way, so we focus on good by-election. So they did like an informal thing, so that when the actual primary came around, it was just like an affirmation process. So after that, someone came up with her and said she didn't agree with what the state has done, and she was well within her right to do it. I was even excited because it was a woman. Like, okay, well, you're fighting me. I'm sad, but I like that you're, kicking against this, because it was well within your right to contest. But at the same, and I had never seen something. I was surprised to see the massive support. Leaders, imagine when 80-year-old men are saying, are going to speak to other people on your behalf. And this particular man, it was somebody that had kicked against me earlier in the beginning. It was one of those who had said, the person I said, said, oh, you're just coming and you want to snatch what? And they still having listened and saying, no, it must be Simi. We're not going to let this thing leave Simi. So for me, I was able to build that political capital within the party. And because I had a presence at the national level of the party before, that also helped. Because party people were saying, oh, okay, if we elect this person, she has that connection with the national. And then finally, on the other hand, social capital. And so one thing that I tried to do different was to be accountable every step of the way. So I have a newsletter where I was updating people. And I sent out a newsletter today because I flagged off my campaign yesterday, I just sent out a newsletter about that. So I ensured that I'm keeping, so when I finished the primaries, I gave a complete breakdown of how much I had spent, what it was spent on. Because for me, beyond being accountable, I also want other young people to have like sort of a template, like, oh, this is what the field looks like. Okay, if Simi did this and got this far, maybe if I tweak a few things, I'll be like that. So I ensured that the social capital I got in from my professional network, I'm leveraging seriously on it and keeping them accountable. So so when it comes to that political and social capital, I think that's how I've been able to navigate it thus far.
Thank you very much, Simi. I think for me, 2 key issues that arise from this first set of speakers is one, from Honorable KJ, the ways in which institutional responses to popular mobilization for change are critical for transforming mobilization into processes of law or institutional changes. The example of the change in the limit that was imposed on regard of age for participation in electoral offices was a critical example of that. And I think on the other side, Simi is an example of everyday processes of mobilizing popular support for political aspiration, and why this is critical for people who want to join the political process to be able to engineer change within. Now we're moving to outside of the institutional processes of politics within the state, to our second theme, which is about creative dissent and dissidence in relation to popular culture as forms of alternative politics in Nigeria, particularly within the context of the Fourth Republic. So we'll have two speakers for this theme. The first is Deborah Adedayo, popularly known as Mr. Macaroni, and the famed broadcaster Sheung Kimbaloye. First, I would ask Mr. Macaroni to speak, to his own experience. What motivated your humor, your approach to political critique through humor, and your engagement with the NSAS movement, and of course also the mobilization for youth participation in 2023. Is Mr. Macaroni there? Can you unmute?
Yes, here. Can I ask if it's okay to use just voice only, or would you require me to use video?
That's fine. We would have loved to see your face, but
yes, I would have loved to. But I'm on set right now, so
okay, go ahead,
I don't think I'm in. Yeah.
That's fine.
Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. It's great to be here. So I'll just jump right at it. First, my inspiration for using humor, let me say my contents to address societal issues will be mostly because of my training as a theater artist. So in school, we have been so trained that drama must not only seek to entertain, it must inform, it must educate, it must be used as a tool to rejuvenate society. Because at the end of the day, we are all products of our society. And as dramatists, we mirror our society. So say your society is burning, you need to reflect, you need to make a creation or a recreation to say what exactly is going on in society. So the society cannot be burning and we are making jokes without referring to the current situation of the society. So that's particularly my inspiration. I was trained by a former director general of the National Theatre, Professor Ahmed Yerima, and he was keen to this form of drama that seeks to heal the society, that seeks to purge the citizens in the country and let everyone see how things are and how we can all do better in making sure that the society is good for us all. So about my participation in the NSAS protest, that would be a function of who I have always been. I like to say that I do not like for people to be cheated. I like to say that I stand up for myself as many times as possible. All the time that I ever needed to stand up for myself and people around me, I did that. And I did that with so much pride because I strongly believe, things cannot be going bad and everyone is afraid to talk about it. And then because things are a certain way does not necessarily mean that they should be that way. It could just be that these things have not been challenged before. So I don't know, I've not been much of a conformist on these issues. When I see that things happen, when I get into a space and I see what's going on, I like to look at what is happening and see if it is the right thing. And it's not just a function of everybody is doing it because that's how they've been doing it. I question myself, is this right? And then I like to do what is right. So NSAS protest, because even before stardom, I have experienced the unprofessionalism of the Nigerian police force and security agents, as it were. And, the way they tend to abuse power. A number of occurrences, because of the type of person I am, I ensure that all my documents are complete. If I'm driving a car, I want to make sure I have my driver's license. I want to make sure that I have everything complete. So that when you stop me, if you stop me, I'm looking at your face like this. Hello? I say hello, you tell me hi. Ask for whatever you want to ask for, I give it to you. Because, and I always say this thing, right from when the experience the idea that we have about police officers has not just been good. You know, when you're approaching a roadblock, oh, these police people again. You see the reaction from your parents. You see the reaction from your uncles or aunties, even as a kid. And you're approaching a roadblock and they are constantly complaining, not because they are breaking any law, because they've done something, but they're just complaining. They're just ranting. Oh, I want to oh, meaning these police people again. And it shouldn't. Maybe on professionalism, as I earlier said, corruption, the culture of corruption, you know, on the part of these officers that makes the first reaction of citizens when they encounter these police officers to be that of inconvenience, that, oh, look, I don't want to deal with these people. So, you know, now attaining the heights that I've been able to attain now, by God's grace, and feedback myself, you know, and I like to say that I think God blessed me with the platform that I have today to further amplify the work I've been doing, which is simply speaking up for myself and people around me, you know. So when NSAS protest, when it was going to start, you know, I saw a couple of tweets online, you know, and then Reno and a couple of others said they were going to be at Alausa, and then there was a lot of attention at Lekki, of course, because there were celebrities there that I said, look, we are going to come out, we are going to protest. I mean, there was Fowles, there was Naira Marley at some point, Runtown, you know, everyone's attention was just focused on Lekki. But then I said, look, if these people are doing their own at Lekki, I mean, I'm on the mainland, right? So why not? And a couple of people have said they are at Alausa already. Why not go there and join them? Why not lend a voice? I mean, this, in as much as we have been doing one or two things online, this is physical. There are people there now who are not happy about the situation of things in the country as per police brutality. Go out there, let people see you, and perhaps it motivates one or two people to join the fight and join the cause and say, look, okay, if everyone then comes together and we're saying we are tired of police brutality, we are tired of the corruption in the system that is supposed to be protecting us, I felt that would create a not a change immediately, but let the government know that, okay, look, these people are serious and they want a change. So that was majorly my motivation as to joining the NSAS protest at the time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Macaroni. I will now move on to Seun Okinbalo. I want you to speak to your experience, given your vantage position in engaging with power and the powerful. How have you used, this platform, and what has been your experience in relation to how to challenging people in power to create new forms of politics, alternative forms of politics, and what kinds of reactions have you received in pushing them towards new visions of politics, and what kinds of judgment have you reached over time about the contemporary experience, particularly in Nigeria's Fourth Republic?
Thank you so much, Prof. And I want to sincerely thank my very good sister, Dr. Okenwa, and all the organizers of this very important conversation. Thank you so much indeed. I appreciate the opportunity to speak at this forum. I dare say that if you want to do something different, be ready for the trouble that will come with it. And some of the things that personally, and I need to make this clarification, a lot of people think, they keep asking me the question why I do what I do. And I think that I've been like how I've been for the past almost 20 years now. I have perhaps a similar background with Debo, Mr. Macaroni. I was a trained actor too. I went through theater arts and training. So there is a sense of you mirroring the society. There is a sense of obligation that you have. So going into journalism, what people forget, or a lot of people do not understand the fact that journalism is perhaps one of a few professions in Nigeria that is cast in the Nigerian constitution. The duty and the role of the media and the journalist is particularly properly stated. And I guess if I'm not wrong now, is this section 38 or thereabout 33 or 38, I can't remember vividly right now, where it says that the role of the media is to probe the government or those who are in power and take it back to the people. So the journalist is the intermediary between the governed and the government. So there is a sense of, there's a burden of trust from the people on the journalist to question the status quo, to question the institution, to question those who have taken on the oath of leading the people. And a lot of my colleagues, I think it's also very good for us to realize that sacred duty that we have, that we owe. I see it as much as a duty like the priest or the cleric or the spiritual leader within the spiritual sector, or the role of a judge in the courtroom is so sacred, is so fundamental to the development of our society. And that is perhaps one of the reasons why I owed that trust dearly. And that's, for me, each time I sit in front of anyone or I sit with anyone who is in power, I erase my personality. I just take away myself from the equation, and I try to imagine, what are Nigerian people saying? What do they want to, what would they like to ask this personality? Well, there are a lot of issues, and politicians are the most evasive people I've ever met in my life. They never get to the point. You ask them questions, they derail, they go off the point, just not to answer the questions. And I guess in the last 10 years or so, with the help of the platform and the grace that I have, we've been able to chart a new course in the sphere, in the media space. There is a moment where people just believe that they never believe what politicians are saying. My boss had given me the opportunity to turn a weekly program into a daily program. And the first conversation was, how can you have a daily political program? It looks almost impossible. What are you going to be talking about? But when we started, it looked difficult. But now we have other networks who are doing daily political program. It was something that we charted. It never existed in the last 15 to 20 years, but we started something. And it came to the point where you sit with a politician and you are able to question them on what the people want to hear or what the people are thinking, not about, because politics, governance, and even the work I do is not about those who are in that seat or in that position. It's about the people. And when I saw the topic about popular culture and the relationship with politics and how people can, the dissent, and how you can creatively weave your ideas into challenging status quo, I'm much inspired. Started thinking about what has happened over the last few years. Now, let me give some vivid example. I've gotten into trouble a few times because each time I do something, there is a spark of a reaction. Somebody feeling that I've stepped on toes, I've said something or asked a question that is that they do not want to hear. And I've been reported several times. I've had to go face the Nigerian Broadcasting Commission, our regulator. Sometimes when some people are not happy, governments have come, governments have gone. And I've had a situation in this country before when a minister of information in past government had taken my case up and really felt offended by what the conversation I had with him. And so there is a consequence in wanting to challenge or oppose or even poke the political class. They do not like to be asked questions. A politician or someone, a governor, for example, he asks the questions. He never gets to be asked questions. And so when you're asking them the tough question, they do not feel it is appropriate. And that was why I felt I wrote an article. I don't know if anyone saw it during the EndSARS. And I felt really bad that it looked like a premonition. Every organized or every kind of dissent that has caused some kind of changes in global politics have come in some kind of organization, in some kind, not only being creative in you be able to come together and creatively chart an organization in which you can chart your cause. And the EndSARS was not about EndSARS alone. It was about so many things that was wrong in our society. It was a point that politicians, citizens, it shut down the country in most parts of the country where these protests held. But one thing that it lost at a point is how we could take it forward. It is the fear of EndSARS that had agitated the minds of politicians. They do not want to see a repeat of EndSARS. Those who in government would not like to see what happened in EndSARS. Unfortunately, the ripple effect, or those who had gone renegade, who now took the opportunity of EndSARS and turned it into something else, was a sad event. But there was an agitation in the average person. Even those who you imagine that would not believe in the EndSARS believed in it. They joined their voices into it. And some of us felt that there was a necessary platform for government to engage with the average people. There was a disconnect. And this is the gap that some of us are trying to bridge in our own duties as journalists. And recently, started doing something that looks like an editorial that you find in the newspapers, where this is actually allowed in within the journalism practice. You pick a very strategic topic and you look at all sides and you look at how you can move the society forward. And I touched on a few issues, touched on the issue of ASU, I've touched on the issue of security, touched on the issues of civil engagement of voters and the need for them to go out and collect their PVCs. And I discovered that it generated some conversations around, it sort of opened their eyes. It's not as if Nigerians do not know the problems and the solutions of this country. An average Nigerian is aware, is conscious, is knowledgeable about the problems, and he has an idea of the solution. But it does look to me a lot of the time that they do not have the voice or someone who can speak for them. And that is what I try to do a lot of the time. My program is a political program around policy, governance, and politics. And because I engage with the so-called high and mighty, I try to use the opportunity so many times to engage those who are in power in such a way that it will bring out those things that people want to know: the age issues, the health issues, how much is being spent. In fact, there was a time I was delving into political economics. You build roads for the state. It's not about building the roads alone. How much does it cost? In other climes, the same kilometer of road, how much does it cost? You spend 30 billion to build a starting kilometer of road that could be built with 1 billion naira. Everybody is happy that you've done it. But the question is that I try as much as possible to pose questions that will help Nigerians to understand these issues. And as we're going into the elections, editorially, some of us have decided that it's not just going to be about the manifestos or what politicians want to do. We're going to be asking them critical questions. I've heard and I'm tired of listening to answers of we're going to build roads, we're going to build schools. No, Nigeria, we're said to be insolvent in some ways because we have what they call the revenue problem. How are you going to do it? That is the next conversation. Tell us, how are you going to fix this problem? You have an idea to fix it, but how? So that's my experience in doing what I'm doing. And I guess over the past few years, there's been a lot of questions as to how tough, how high I've gone, or perhaps how deep I've gone. And some people might differ in the manner and my approach, but that's me over the years. For those who've known me for the past 2 decades, that has been me. And that's how I believe that the work and the job needs to be done. It could be done better, but there is always room for improvement. Thank you so much, Prof.
Thank you very much for your responses for this session. I want to thank Professor Okebiano, who has now joined us. But just before I ask him to speak, I would like Simi to take up the question of the kinds, how can you, given your position, effect forms of alternative practices in within the party structure, especially against the backdrop of your experience.
Sorry, I lost you a bit, so if you could take that again.
Oh, okay. I was asking, how you think, given your experience, you could effect alternative forms of politics within the party structure. Okay,
so I will speak directly to something I have been working on within the party structure. So, when I started talking the other time, I say I came to the party trying to offer value and things. So 2 things I had worked on was trying to change how the party talks to people. Generally, our leaders, I know that they talk as the citizens. We don't engage with people. We don't talk with them. We don't listen to them. So I tried to, help redesign the comms of the party, especially targeted towards young people. Unfortunately, some of the powers that be stepped on because it wasn't a priority at the time as well. So I know that is one thing I intend to keep pushing as within the party. And hopefully once the election season is out, we will keep working on that. It's something I've already started engaging even with the national youth leaders. How do we change how we talk to parties? I know that for me, that would change politics in those. But it's just small things of how are politicians talking to people? How are you listening to the citizens? Stop talking at us. Stop pushing things down our throat. That's one. The second thing I had started working on was on getting more young people into the party. And so I was on the national committee for the e-registration of party members, and that was something. It actually before the party started doing it, I and some other people in the party we started building our own portal, and I thought that we'll build it as much as we can and then give it to the party to run it. But then we found out the party was building, so they brought us on board to serve on the committee, because I believe that there's a great need for a critical mass of people in the party. So I think before we can begin to look at what I just talked about and said how a communications thing I had planned and I got as we pushed it back, because I didn't have that critical mass of people in the party who were thinking similarly, who were able to push this, which is why I've stopped and I said, okay, how can we get that critical mass of people in the party? I think before we can begin to talk about alternative parties, because there are people within the party, just that we're far, we're not a lot, there's just a handful of us that have some evidence, who really want to change things, who are thinking of alternative strategies, who are thinking of things that can make the party, the country better, but there are not a lot of us. So what we're working on is how to bring other, especially young, my focus is on young people and women. So how can we bring more young people, more women who are thinking along similar lines into the party? So as once the election season is over, we'll start pushing hard on that. Working towards 2027, towards future cycles. Let's start bringing people like us at every level, at the world level. I believe that it's important to focus on what happens at the world level. So one thing I say to people is that the people at the world level are also determining the people that become the experts at the world level. And those are the people who are involved in primaries. Those are the ones who decide who our presidential candidates are. They're the ones who decide who the gubernatorial candidates are and candidates like me. If you don't have people there who can make the right decisions, or if we don't change the entire system of getting candidates into office. So for me, my solution is let's start bringing in people at those levels. So that has to be the starting point for talking about, how can we change things within the party system? How can we have alternatives? How do we design our democracy? We need to get the right people into the system first. Those who are really starting from the world level. So maybe, and I'll just use this as like a party word, because I do need to run. I took some time away from a political meeting. Young people out there, you say Nigerians, any other countries, please get into other parties. Hello?
Yeah, I lost you for a moment, but you can round up. Go ahead.
Okay, so saying speaking to young people, the ideas are there. Nigerians are not short of ideas. We're not short of things that we can use to change our democracy. It's the people that we lack, and it's the people with the will to do so, and the people that you need to get. So please join a party. Of course, not everybody can be a political party, can be a party member, But for those of you who are so inclined, please join a party. Be active in your ward. Let your voice be heard. And finally, to women in particular, always let your voice be heard in young women. Your voice needs to be heard. Be part of those who make those decisions. And I really, really do need to run and get back to my campaign. But it's been a pleasure speaking. Thanks for having me here. And I'm really glad that this conversation is happening because I know it will help us to explore further ways of what we can do, to improve our democracy in Nigeria and Africa.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Simi. I would now ask Professor Ibiano to join the conversation. He would be speaking about how to rethink electoral politics and also in relation to political influencers in 2023 and beyond. Is Professor Ibiano here? Can we see? Yeah. Can you unmute? And also, are you here? Professor Ibiano? Okay, while we're waiting for him to come, I think I should go back to Honorable KJ. I would like to know, is Honorable KJ still with us? Okay, yes, I would like to know how you think that those who are engaged in party politics and also who hold electoral offices can mobilize the kinds of the process of dissent and of engagement with party politics and with the general political atmosphere as manifested in different ways with NSAS or the kinds of engagement that you talked about earlier with the changes to the electoral law. What kinds of what other forms of engagement do you think are critical to affect both the party politics and governance?
Okay. Well, politics is as old as time. And we spoke about the interventions in the last couple of years about changing the face of our politics. And I was listening to Simi, and it's very interesting, because I see the enthusiasm in trying to change the system from within and, very ambitious things. But you see, as a woman, and I made the point when I started, that when I got into politics about 20 years ago, I was a double minority. I was young and I was a woman. I'm still a woman now, thankfully, but not so young anymore. And I tell you that there's so many things that are within the political party structure that don't win elections. Okay. So you speak about how do we galvanize the base? The base has always been there. But the truth of the matter is that unfortunately, politics was run by the politicians for the politicians until in the recent years, again, and I say that the citizens have started to rise to their own, to what it is that they're supposed to do, to their responsibility as citizens in a democracy. And so galvanizing the base has always been, I mean, we talk about women, and at this point, even though I don't like to be sequestered or speak to the gender issues, I mean, now I must do it because in all the political spaces, there's always been the women. 75% of the voters have always been women. And so women have always wanted to talk to the critical issues in the governance space. Women are the ones who want safer cities. They're the ones who want the education. They're the ones who want better hospitals and so on and so forth. I'm not saying that the men don't, but I've seen more of enthusiasm amongst the women when it comes to government and governance issues. And if I were to speak to my own experiences, in spite of what everybody says about women not supporting women, I find that my greatest base has always been women. And every time there has been the need for us to talk to creating better environments for our children or for the next generation, I've always found that the women need little or no prompting to be a part of that system. Now, unfortunately, in engaging with the people, in engaging with the women, and engaging with the society, I have also found that over the years, why there seems to be apathy is that certain things have not happened. The Nigerian person has not believed that his vote have counted. They have not believed that, haven't come out to engage with the politicians, that at the end of the day, that the promises that the politicians make ever come out of the leaky pipeline as what it is that the people want. And so I have found, again, I take it back to the fact that politics has always been there. So there's nothing anybody is doing new now. It has always been there. But it's just that because of the greater interest in politics, because of the despondency by the average Nigerian, because of the fact that they've seen that outside of the Nigerian shores, that when people show more than a passing interest in what happens politically, that changes happen. I have seen that the rest of Nigeria is starting to look outside of Nigeria. For instance, as I said, prior to this time, the world was not such a small place. So you see a lot of Nigerian politicians and a lot of Nigerians looking to what happened in Kenya. And it has reignited hope in Nigeria that it is possible that if the average Nigerian actually stands up and shakes the table, that things are going to start to happen. Again, we've started to see that people are interested in the new innovations with the Electoral Act, with the innovations as far as beavers are concerned, electronic voting. And again, INEC has also given a good showing of itself in the last 2 elections. So we saw what happened in the Osun elections. We saw what happened in the Ekiti elections. And so Nigerians are starting to say it is actually possible for opposition parties to win elections if things are put. And let's also not forget that these are consolidation elections as well as transition elections, right? So what do I mean? The present president has served out his 8-year tenure. And so you can see that there is now the ability that Nigerians are going to elect a brand new person. And so the stakes are a lot higher. Furthermore, NSAS, COVID has exacerbated every problem Nigeria had. The wedges that have divided us as a country are deeper than they ever have been. We have the economy is in ruins, insecurity, and the need and the hope for the Nigerian people that if they can actually come out. But the point I want to make as well is that in 2015 as well, when we had transition elections, more Nigerians came out to vote as well. We had 43% voter turnout in 2015. Those were also transition elections. We've come by again to 2023, transition elections yet again. But the problem is that with COVID, with insecurity, and with the groundswell of what is happening around the world, we see that there is so much, there's just, Nigerians are raring to go and it's a breath of fresh air. But as for whether it is a new thing, politics has always been there. And, I think old politics, unfortunately, old politics is starting to take a back seat for the new things that we're starting to see. And this, of course, the advent of infotech meets enthusiasm of youth, just the sheer numbers, the burgeoning demographics, the knowledge that the youth can make the change, the fact that it's happening in other climes, and therefore why not in Nigeria? All this mix has created the enthusiasm that we see going forward. And so, as I said, it's old meet new, but the old ones have always been there. The women in the villages are coming out there. And so there's really nothing, it just makes your work easier as a politician, because right now, you don't have to campaign as much for people to come out and vote. Nigerians are ready to go and kick us out, the old politicians.
Thank you very much, Honorable. I think Keviano is ready now. Would like him to speak to how to rethink electoral politics as we move towards 2023 elections. Professor Ibiano?
Okay. Yeah, thank you. If you can hear me.
Yes, I can hear. We can hear you.
Yeah, you won't believe it. I've just been driving. I just got to where I will be able to speak to you. But if you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great.
Hello? we can no longer hear. Okay, we can hear you again.
Yeah, what was the question you were posing about the 2023 election?
Yes, I was asking how you think the electoral how we can rethink electoral politics as we move towards 2023 and also beyond 2023.
Okay, two quick points. I think the first one for me is that we need to make a distinction between alternative politics and alternative politicians. I think it's important to make this point. I think Honorable Ukeze, in a sense, alludes to the point about changing the face of politics. I think we can change the face of politics, and I see a lot of attempts to change the face of politics. The debates about including more young people, more women, how we do things. We can change the face of politics, but I don't see that we are anywhere close to changing politics itself, because the politics we are looking at is definitely more fundamental than just changing of politicians. And this is what actually worries me. I think what young people are angling for, what they are basically fighting for, is only possible by changing politics. And that means some fundamental roots and branches changes to the nature of the state, to nature of the political economy, and to the nature of governance itself. And that is far-reaching and fundamental. And I don't see that we are getting there. And that is where I think the frustration will come from. That we are. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Yes.
So that even if we are able to get the best out of this system, whether we are going to change life for the ordinary people, for young people in any fundamental way, remains a concern for me. So, and I think what NSAS represents is far beyond trying to change, the face of politics, or trying to change politicians, or not trying to change policy. I think it points to more fundamental issues about the character of the state itself, which I don't think these politics can deliver. So that's the first point. But be that as it may, I think the second point to make is and I've always argued that this democracy that we are practicing is really about making the best of a next best alternative, so to speak. So how do we make the best of this, if you like, this inadequate democracy itself, this electoral democracy that we practice? I think in a way, we are on the right path. And this is something we have been doing now for a couple of years as a country, as INEC, as young people mobilizing to challenge certain practices and certain states of affairs, getting our politics to be more inclusive, even though I'm not sure we are doing that well on that. So to that extent, there is some promise that we can continue on that trajectory and continue to improve the quality of this politics, of this democracy. I'm sure allusions have already been made to our new Electoral Act and the attempt to use technology to improve the quality of elections. So all that are very important, and we see the kind of mobilization that is in a way leveraging on the End SARS movement, in which it looks like their own future into their own hands and trying to redefine politics within the confines of this politics, if you remember what I said earlier. Yeah. So these are all good signs. But the big issue for me for 2023 is there. INEC is willing. It is now an improved system for conducting elections. My point is that if you look at its capacity to plan, if you look at its commitment to certain improvements in the electoral process, there have been tremendous improvements in those areas. But the paradox is that as the Commission has become better in terms of organizing elections, it has become more vulnerable in terms of political intervention within its, into its work. And there is no better way of expressing this than the recent appointment of commission. So this is really the big paradox, that the commission improves technically, but then becomes more susceptible to political influences. And that is what I believe is going to create enormous problems in the 2023 election. I don't know if I'm making any sense, but to round
yes,
up,
certainly, yes.
Yeah, I think the final thing to say for me is that young people in Nigeria must understand that this must be for the long haul. It is not just about 2023. It is about long-term organization to take back, their country. People speak glibly about taking back our country. It is not something to be done in 1 year. It's not something to be done in one election. It's something to be properly organized and pursued over the long term, because the forces that are at play are really, really, far-reaching and very powerful. And these are not forces that you can overthrow in one electoral cycle, so to speak. So these are my initial thoughts. And I'm sorry, I've been on the road. I hope that I can throw more light on the issues if I'm required to. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your intervention. I think we'll move to questions quickly now, because we have only about 14-15 minutes to end this session. I would pose the questions to particular members of the panel and then ask you to respond after I've asked all the questions. There's a question for Sheung. The question is from Adebisi Adenikpekun. He wants to know if you have ever been threatened for what you do, and if so, what keeps you going? And I would ask you to respond. I hope Sheung can hear the question. Give me a few seconds to get back to you to respond. And then there's a question which I think Professor Ibiano should respond to. The question is, how do you believe big tech like metaverse could affect elections and politics, particularly the next round of elections in 2023? And this question, I would like the Honorable KJ to respond to this question. How can young people take advantage of the coming shift in politics, particularly in 2023? Then there is a question from Wimbai Kazutu, who is speaking. Is really not a direct question, but I think there is a question about the ways in which veteran politicians use, billions of questionable money to affect politics. So this person is trying to understand how much it costs to win power in Africa. In Kenya, he or she says that it can run into hundreds of millions of dollars, and so would like to know how much it costs to win election in Africa in general, particularly maybe with reference to Nigeria. Perhaps we can ask Honorable KJ to give us some insight into how much it costs to win elections against the backdrop of our experience. So let me ask Kashum to respond first.
Thank you so much, Prof. Appreciate it. If I have been threatened, yes, I've been threatened. Death threats a few times. Threats in different areas. In fact, I've been told there was a time that we were going to do a debate in a particular state prior to an election. And there was a particular political party who believed that in the engagement to the debate, that maybe the candidates did not do well. And they told me that after this debate, I should not come back to their state for the election. I've had many threats. There was a time that I reported IPOP. There were a lot of issues. I've gone to the Northeast to do reporting too. There have been threats in several areas. But the way I see it is that these things come, especially when you are covering politics, it's a bit tricky. Sometimes you don't see where the threat is going to come from, but it does come. And the thing for me is that I believe that I don't go around with police. I don't go around with security. I just look at where I go and how I move around. As much as people sound the alarm that you need to be careful, you need to do this, I try to take precautions and all of that. But I just believe that the conviction of what I do should by God's help, I will be able to sail through. But I am not deterred at all. I don't feel any fear or whatsoever. I just keep going because I believe in what I do.
Thank you very much. Honorable KJ, you have 3 minutes to answer the 2 questions. Are you there? Honorable KJ?
Yes. I think how can young people take advantage? I think that was the question.
Yes, that's the first question. The second is for you to give us an insight into how much it costs, to run for election, particularly in your case.
I think that now that the space is open, now that the constitutional loopholes have been taken away for young people, I think that the first thing that a young person must do is to get into a political party. In the past, I used to say that fringe parties didn't win elections, but with the upsurge in the Labour Party, I think that theory has been thrown out the window. But I think that the most important thing is that young people must get into a political party. They must create an opportunity for doing that. Another thing that must happen is self-evaluation. And with that, my question is, why do I really want to get into politics? What do I really want to do? Do I want to get into politics and become one of the old politicians, or do I want to get into politics and actually make a change? Another thing is funds. A lot of people, there's a saying that money is the breast milk of politics. It's very vulgar, and so a lot of people don't like to talk about it. But the truth of the matter is that everywhere in the world, you must have the opportunity to have access to funds. It doesn't have to be personal funds. Nobody runs elections on personal funds. But I think the most important thing is to be able to create a base where you're able to call in favors. And when I talk about funds, I mean it can be in cash, it can be in kind. For instance, what is your support base? How strong is that support base? And how much are they willing to give you? So I think that, again, first and foremost, aside from all of that, it's for you to go back home. A lot of people are city tigers. Unfortunately, Nigeria is very tribal, is very sectional, and so it's very difficult. The only state I know, the only place I know in Nigeria where it's possible for you to be from one state and run in another state, I believe it's in Lagos State. Everywhere else in Nigeria, you must go home to run in that election. And so it doesn't matter how active you are in your place of residence. I think that the first thing to do is to go home, join a political party, and start to galvanize the base from that. It's a very long, the things to do are so many, and I only have 3 minutes, so I'm just going to jump there. But I think that the initial thing is go home, avail yourself of the opportunity to engage with the people at home, understand the politics, know who the gatekeepers are, and just start to make friends and understand. But the first thing is self-interrogation. Why exactly do I want to do it? And how much am I going to give of myself to navigate these waters? Now, as far as how expensive it is or inexpensive it is to run elections, it would depend on so many things. It would depend on the position you're vying for. It would depend on where you come from, and it would depend on who your opponent is. Now, I know that the Electoral Act has put a cap on how much you can spend in all the elections. And I know that even at that, it excludes so many people. It excludes women, it excludes so many demographics, it excludes women, and it excludes the young because it is very, very expensive. I was watching a television program today, and incidentally, it was a Showaki Baloye program on the youth and what it is that they how much they use. And there's this NGO, I don't quite recall what it's called right now, but they said that for a State House of Assembly seat, I think they put it realistically at 60 million naira for a House of Representatives seat. This was their figures, not my figures, by the way. They put it at 200 million. For the Senate, I think it was 5 billion, and it went up to very ridiculous figures. I know that the Electoral Act has come up with pegging the presidential elections at 5 billion naira. They've pegged the governorship at 1 billion naira, the federal house at 70 million. But as I said, that is the law. Now, if you spend over and above those figures, you would have run afoul of the law. But the question is, how do they track how much spending there is? So yes, it is very expensive, and it is way out of the reach of the two most vulnerable groups, the women and the youth, that we want to be more included in politics. But as I said, it will depend on three things: how much you have, where you're running out of, and how much your opponent is spending. Those are the three things I would say that would determine how much you would spend in an election.
Thank you very much, Professor Ibiano. 2 minutes.
Okay, if I understand the question correctly, it's the threat of big tech. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, big tech will always be a challenge to elections in Africa because I think there are a couple of to elections in Africa. The big thing for me is that election technology is actually a terrain in which Africa and African countries are terribly disadvantaged, not just in terms of the cost, but in terms of the skill of controlling the technology itself. So it's always going to be a problem. I believe that the silver bullet for solving all electoral problems is actually the application of technology, and that is not really the case. I think a bigger threat for me, having worked in designing some of these technologies, the bigger threat is not big technology as much as it is the disillusionment that comes from a belief that technology will solve everything. Technology remains a black box, and I keep saying that if we do not trust manual processes that you can observe and follow from end to end, you are not likely to trust a few, specialists, working behind the scenes, just coming out and telling you this is how you voted and all that. So it's really the lack of trust in our institutions that is more fundamental. That is not to belittle the threat that international big tech pose to the electoral process. But I don't think for example, from where I sit, I think we have taken, or the Commission has taken adequate steps to protect its tech facilities. For example, if you look at the voter register, the idea is to make sure that it's not permanently online, and that way you reduce the possibility of being, hacked, or for undermining your security. But the threats are also internal, in terms of those who run the system from inside. Yeah, so my answer to that is that, yeah, big tech is a problem. It's expensive. They can undermine you. I can share experiences that will shock you about the experiences of the Commission with a French company that role for Nigeria, which had actually initially done the civic registration and locked up the data and was asking for huge sums of money before the data could be released to the country. Up till now, the country was not able to retrieve that data, and that is why registration of citizens. So it's a threat, but from where I sit in terms of INEC, the two big threats, bigger threats, so to speak, will be this problem of trust, and secondly, being undermined from inside. So this will be my responses to the question. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I thank all the participants. We are just a minute beyond our time. I want to thank everybody who participated in this panel. I don't want to go through mentioning your name one by one because of time is up. I also thank all the audience, the members of the audience. We have people from Malawi, from Kenya, from the UK, from Nigeria. So thank you all for your participation, and I hand it over now to Dr. Doris Okenwa. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Wale. Thank you to everyone for joining us. Please join us tomorrow in person in the University of Oxford if you're around 3:30 to 6 o'clock at the Investcall Theatre, Investcall Auditorium, St. Anthony's College, or join us online. The login details will be available. And Dr. Anne McKenna would bid you farewell finally. Thank you very much. Anne?
Hello, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Hello, what an incredibly rich discussion we've had today. And this is just the start of a longer conversation over the next tomorrow and over the next few terms as well. So I'm really excited. A big thank you to all the speakers. A big thank you to Professor Wale Adebanu for always being present and helpful in sharing our conversations. A big thank you to Dr. Doris Okenwa for pulling this together, and excited to meeting you all tomorrow. For those who are not able to join us tomorrow, please, you're also welcome by AFOX to join us for the next AFOX in Saka, which is basically a gathering of like-minded individuals who are interested in Africa-related research. The next one is going to interrogate barriers to success for international students in UK higher education institutions, and an interesting conversation on African abolitionist movements from Angola. So I think you do not want to miss that one. So please join us on the 28th of October for that. And you can look at the AFOX website for more details. Thank you so much, and looking forward. Oh, there you go. It's all put up already. Thank you indeed, and looking forward to another absolutely engaging discussion tomorrow afternoon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Hi, Prof.
Doris, you're on mute.
No,